All right, we are live. Rabbi?
Good evening, everyone. I'm Rabbi Denise Eger. I'm the Senior Rabbi of Congregation Kol Ami, West Hollywood's Reformed Synagogue, and we're delighted to welcome you to this West Hollywood City Council Candidate Forum tonight. And Congregation Kol Ami is so delighted to work together again with ICAN, the Israel American Civic Action Network, to bring this evening to you with us, our candidates.
All right. Thank you, Rabbi. My name is Dylan Hosier. I am the Chief Advocacy Officer at the Israeli American Civic Action Network, an organization dedicated to empowering Israeli immigrants and American allies to create change for a better America, a more secure Israel, and a stronger U.S. alliance through advocacy, education, and civic action. Tonight, we're very glad to welcome our City Council candidates with us from West Hollywood. I'll talk about the ground rules very quick. For those watching, we're going to give a 2-minute opening statement for each candidate. Then the rabbi and I will ask a series of questions, and each candidate will have 90 seconds to answer. I will remind our viewers that you can comment, and please keep the comments civil, if you would. Please do not attack the candidates, and please promote some civil discourse. And we'll also remind the candidates as well, we're looking here to have a friendly conversation. We're not here to attack, but here to have a friendly discussion and talk about best practices and policies for our city. So Rabbi, if you'd like to kick us off for our opening statement.
Yes, so friends, we want to give you each a chance to share your opening statement with those that are watching tonight. And I'm going to call you in alphabetical order. So that would be Larry Block, if you would share your first 2 minutes in opening statement with us.
Can you hear me?
You can.
You can? Okay. Hi, everybody. My name is Larry Block. I was born in Brooklyn and grew up in the 5 towns of Long Island. My mother is a Kohen, my father an Ashkenazi, and I am the son of a peasant with the blood of Abraham. My grandfather emigrated to the United States during the war and spent his life looking for his 2 brothers. I grew up stamping Jordache horses on apparel at my uncle's factory and worked my way through college, selling all the Jordache stuff at the Roosevelt Field Flea Market. In the 1990s, I founded YMLA, my own company, elected to the Inc. 500 fastest growing companies in America. I'm partially sighted, blind in my left eye with a minus 9.50 lens in my right, and I wake up every day trying to do good for others and understand that we need to take care of those who cannot take care of themselves. I founded Cross Safe WeHo that led to the pedestrian safety zones. Term limits initiative began with my knock on a neighbor's door. I was the 2019-2020 chairman of the Public Facilities Commission and the 2013-2014 chairman of the Disability Advisory Board. I initiated the Green City Awards and the Disability Health Fair to bring free flu shots to residents. My business was the winner of the 2019 Creative City Business Award. And when COVID hit, I rushed to get masks to see even disabled residents to stop community spread. I'm ready to help move our city forward.
Thank you. Thank you, Larry. We're so glad that you're here tonight. Councilmember Duran, if you'd share your statement.
Thank you, Rabbi, and thank you all for hosting us this evening. My name is John Duran. I'm a 20-year incumbent on the West Hollywood City Council, native Angelino, and I've called West Hollywood home for over 30 years now. Running for re-election is always, I think, something that each of us has to think about, whether we're ready to dedicate another 4 years to our community and be of service. With COVID-19 hitting the city, it has so dramatically hit us, our finances, our tourism, our local economy, our residents, our workers, all across all segments of the city of West Hollywood, that I decided that this was not the time to leave, that this was the time to run again, to make sure that the city is stable and secure moving forward for its next 20 years. We are very fortunate in West Hollywood because of council members present and past. We've put aside $140 million for a rainy day. That rainy day is here. And fortunately, because of that prudent reserve, we haven't had to lay off any employees, cut back any services or programs, and we've had the ability to weather this particular storm. Still going to be difficult times ahead, though. I'm one of the founders of Equality California, the Life AIDS Lobby, the Angle Access Now for Gay and Lesbian Equality are all organizations that I started here locally that have helped move the LGBT agenda forward. I'm very protective of the Sunset Strip where I reside and also very protective of historic Boys Town and the LGBT district down in Santa Monica Boulevard. So a few more projects I need to finish up. I need to finish up the AIDS Monument. It's under construction now at West Hollywood Park, bringing the metro to the city of West Hollywood, continuing to develop affordable housing for those in need here in the city, and of course, protecting our public safety as we are threatened by both pandemic and economic collapse simultaneously. So I look forward to the discussion, and I respectfully ask for your vote on November the 3rd. Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you. John Erickson, it's your turn.
Thank you so much, Rabbi, and thank you, Dylan, as well as ICAN and Kolami for hosting today's forum. Looking forward to it, and I wish we were all together in person, but here we are in our new virtual world. My name is John Erickson, and I'm running because West Hollywood needs a strong, progressive, and experienced leadership at the helm right now. My hands-on experience, integrity, fresh ideas, and commitment to keep West Hollywood a beacon for social and economic justice will contribute greatly to the city at this time of crisis. As a West Hollywood Planning Commissioner, a former City Hall employee, a nonprofit healthcare director, I will bring a voice and focus to the council, one that advocates for workers, renters, and the underserved. I'm also running to bring a new generation of leadership to the council. The demographics of West Hollywood has changed. The world has changed, and I'm ready to address these challenges head on. I'm running to make sure that there is a council member who is working on behalf of the West Hollywood residents every single day, and not just when there's fanfare involved. I'm a proud East Side resident, a renter, and I am just so excited to be of service to my community, a community that I love and have called home for over 10 years. And I'm really looking forward to tonight's discussion. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I'll hear from Councilmember Heilman now.
Thank you, Rabbi, and thank you, Dylan, for putting together tonight's forum. As you said, I'm an incumbent, and I've been serving the community for a long time. I think we really should be evaluating candidates based on what they've accomplished and what they can accomplish for the community. And I think my record stands pretty clear in terms of where my values are and what and my commitment to the community. I helped found the city of West Hollywood when we incorporated in 1984. I drafted our city's rent control ordinance. I started our inclusionary housing program for low and moderate income residents. I started our West Hollywood Community Housing Corporation, which builds permanently affordable housing for people in need. I also helped start our whole network of social services and our funding program for social services. And of course, we partner with a lot of great agencies, Jewish Family Service, Jewish Vocational Service, the Gay and Lesbian Center, the Free Clinic, the Saban Free Clinic. And that network of social services has been really critical in helping our residents during the time of the pandemic. Something I initiated a few years ago was our poverty reduction program that put in place homeless prevention programs for residents who were at risk of homelessness. It put in expanded emergency rental assistance programs and emergency food and transportation services. Those services have really been of great use during this time where so many of our residents are experiencing a loss of income, a loss of job, and they're desperate to get their rent paid. So I'm glad that we had those programs in place, and we're going to need to continue those programs going forward. I've also been a champion for our business community, as well as a champion for bringing forth Metro to West Hollywood. My time is up. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'd like to hear now from Sepi Shyne. Sepi, your opening statement.
Thank you, Dylan and Rabbi Egger and our forum hosts, Israeli American Civic Action Network and Congregation Kolami for holding this event. My name is Sepi Shyne. I have been a renter in West Hollywood for 11 years, and I love our city, which is why I'm running to be your voice on the city council. I spent the first 16 years of my life in America as an undocumented immigrant. My parents worked hard every day to contribute to our economy and community and achieve the American dream. Their sacrifices taught me the value of hard work, the importance of listening to and fighting for every person, not just some. Now I run 2 small businesses, serve the residents of West Hollywood as a business license commissioner, and continue to fight for civil rights, and most currently as Political Action and Community Engagement co-chair for the Human Rights Campaign. We are living in unprecedented times that require new leaders at the table to ensure we protect our most vulnerable residents. As we work hard for every dollar, our rents continue to rise and our small businesses continue to close their doors because they can't compete with the gentrification or irresponsible development that is destroying the fabric of our city. It is time to have an advocate for the people. That is why I'm running to be an independent voice for our community. And because I put my money where my mouth is, I'm not taking a single penny from developers or law enforcement. I will bring my 20 years of advocating for equality and business expertise to City Hall. Join our fight to restore the voices of residents and small business owners on the City Council. Let's fight for social justice and an economy that works for all of us, because this is our city and we all deserve to shine.
Thank you so much. And last but not least, Noemi Torres, welcome. Noemi, you're muted, so let's unmute you, and there you go.
All right, well let's restart your time. Go.
Yes, thank you so much, Rabbi, and thank you, Dylan, for having me here. I'm quite honored to be part of this amazing candidacy in this unprecedented times. My name is Noemi Torres, and I chose to be running for City Council in this interesting times, not only because it is time to have new voices on City Council. We need to have more women that are stepping on the table, they're being part of the seat at the table, as well as being able to provide the voice and the transparency and integrity that the people of West Hollywood needs. I have been living here in West Hollywood since 2003, and I have been volunteering with Project Angel Food since then. I know how important it is to be able to be part of the community by volunteering, by giving back. In 2012-13, I became part of the Women's Advisory Board, and I was chair for one of the years. And then I got appointed to Public Facilities Commission in 2016, which I'm still currently serving at. And the reason that I decided to run is because I think it's important, like I said, to have more women at the table. I do know that we have to be part of the community by being an ally for the LGBTQ community, knowing that the actual demographics have changed, just like John said, here in West Hollywood. We have to make sure that we work with them, we listen to their conversations. During this COVID times and the pandemic, we want to make sure that the small businesses as well as renters are well taken care of. We want to make sure that we provide homelessness prevention through the rent programs, as well as support our own house as well. And I do want to make sure that the Metro Crenshaw North gets here to be able to have that artery that actually connects us to the city of LA. I am proud to be part of this, and I'm excited to have this conversation with you.
Well, thank you so much. It's great to hear from all of you as we and your opening statements. We're going to switch gears now a little bit. West Hollywood came into being in part to protect renters' rights. Now, we've seen a lot of changes in West Hollywood since 1984, including major developments, condoization, gentrification. So we'd like to know a little bit tonight to tell us your policy positions and how you would maintain the dignity of our residents. On the one hand, both the renters, and on the other hand, property owners, while ensuring adequate, affordable housing. So, John Heilman, if you'll kick us off the first 2 minutes.
90 seconds.
Thank you, Rabbi. And that is, of course, the big issue in West Hollywood, and it has been for the entire time we're a city. How do we balance the need to protect our existing residents while allowing new housing to be developed that will satisfy the demand for new housing in West Hollywood? Part of what we have done is we have a multifaceted approach. First of all, we have our rent stabilization ordinance, and I'm in favor of retaining that and keeping it strong. I have fought for that for my entire time on the city council. That at least protects residents who are in place. Secondly, as development occurs, as it will, we have inclusionary housing, and that requires 20% of all new units that are built to be set aside for permanently affordable units. And those are affordable for both low income as well as moderate income units. Sometimes we get more low income as a result of negotiating with the developer, but that has resulted in, for instance, the senior building at the Movie-Town Plaza, where we got 77 units of permanent affordable housing, primarily for seniors and people with disabilities. And third, I think, is recognizing that we're not going to solve the affordable housing crisis by simply allowing the market to take place. We have to invest, as we have, in the West Hollywood Community Housing Corporation and other nonprofits that build this kind of housing.
Thank you so much. Larry Block, could you tell us about this policy?
Well, the 20% inclusionary housing program, it's standard. There's nothing new in what John Heilman said. Everybody tells the same story, but I want to talk about gentrification. Block Party is located in the heart of the city, and we entertain local guests and residents every day. I not only see the gentrification, I feel it every single day. When customers walk in to visit WeHo and they say moved out of town and they ask what's happening. Too many people are forced out due to housing prices, and we cannot build enough affordable housing, nor do we want to build towers and then have a lotto and invite everybody of low income all over LA to come into our streets. I don't think that's the plan. But if we could do something to create an affordable housing solution, and I have a new vision forward, affordable housing co-ops and co-op home ownership for others. If we can encourage landlords to co-op their buildings and create affordable housing, and if we could model after the Mitchell-Lamar affordable housing co-ops in New York City, we can provide meaningful change to our housing policy. And when we do this with our nonprofit partners, it changes the game of West Hollywood, and home ownership leads to a vibrant community of stakeholders, and that is what will stem the tide of gentrification, so that we can have the stable homeowner, condo owner, home ownership within our community instead of renters, that their lease ends and they move out. We can't always control that.
Thank you so much. Noemi, if you would address this challenge.
It's quite a challenge indeed, and now that we are, again, doing unprecedented times, we want to make sure that not only the tenants that are having issues with paying the rents, we also have to make sure that the people that actually own the buildings are able to be taken care of. And I would love to see an out-of-the-box idea to not only become work with developers and make them even more responsible on their development, making sure that they are providing the affordable housing that they have promised, even though that it's happening. The dissemination of information doesn't seem to be trickling down to the community itself. I want to make sure that we provide that information and we're the bridge to that. I also would love to see the micro unit idea that we've been working on as realtors, making sure that we're able to disseminate and be able to provide small units for tenants to be able to hopefully once and for all be able to be an owner of their own unit, to have the quality of life and the future that they deserve. But yes, in these unprecedented times, we have to make sure that we get priority to the renters, make sure that they stay at their houses, as well as being able to provide support to the people that own the buildings, for them to be taking care of the buildings and have the quality of life that they have as well.
Thank you. John Erickson, tell us your views on this.
Thank you so much for the question. This is a question that we all have to grapple with as leaders in our community. One thing that as a planning commissioner I look at very seriously is the ways in which we're adding housing to our existing housing stock. And most specifically, as Mayor Pro Tem John Heilman said, how do we not only add more affordable housing, but how are we working with developers to increase those number of units, because they're so critical. Right now, the state has mandated a very high RHNA number that we'll have to hit. It's higher than we've ever had to before. But the thing about the city of West Hollywood is we've always met that challenge. And I have great faith that we will continue to produce housing for people who need housing and people who want to move into the city of West Hollywood. we need to make sure that we're working with everyone in our community, whether or not it's located on the east side, the west side, Center City, wherever we are. When we look at the ways in which community involvement can help not only make sure the project is done right, but it's done with the involvement of everyone who has a major voice within the community that property is going to be built on. We also need to be making sure we're working with our regional partners as well as our statewide partners. The state has in place various rules as a result of the housing crisis that we're in. And for example, the Housing Accountability Act, if a new development has a net gain of housing, the Planning Commission and the City Council can't ultimately not approve it or even not approve it for aesthetic reasons. So we need to work on every level because affordable housing is something that as a renter, I'm very serious about.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Sepi, would you address this issue between renters and owners?
Absolutely. Well, I am a renter myself. I live in Mid-City, pretty close to the east side. And first, we need to limit developer contributions like the city of LA has done to people that are campaigning for office. I'm proud to be a candidate that does not accept a single penny from developers. This will lead to less conflicts of interest and decisions made with independence from developers. With respect to renters, we're 71% of the city. This is thousands of people, and we are renters. And we need to work to repeal Costa-Hawkins, and there is a proposition to amend Costa-Hawkins coming up on the ballot, Proposition 21, and we all need to vote yes on that and pass that. But there's things we can do locally now. One is to strengthen renters' rights. And with that, I suggest strengthening our tenants' claims against landlords for tenant complaints against tenants. And when a landlord is trying to take advantage of a renter, there needs to be stronger enforcement and stronger codes to protect renters. We also need to make sure that landlords are upgrading their units, and I want our rent stabilization and code compliance officers to be able to do inspections of property to ensure that tenants' rights are actually being protected. Secondly, we have met our state numbers for development, but because the RENA numbers have gone up, we need to shift our inclusionary housing policy and create more affordable housing for very low-income housing and low-income.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
John Duran, tell us a little bit about what your philosophy is here.
Okay, Rabbi, since you took us back to 1984, we need some facts. The population of the city of West Hollywood in 1984 was 36,000 people. The population of the city of West Hollywood today is 36,000 people. We have not grown any sort of size. What we've had is, because of our rent stabilization ordinance, the ability to keep people in their apartments long-term for many, many years. Larry suggested a co-op. The problem with co-op, we looked at that some time ago. Russian Jewry from the former Ukraine that are living off Social Security, people with disabilities, people living with HIV and AIDS, who are paying below market rents of $800, $1,200, even $1,500 a month. They can't afford to buy a condo. Condos in West Hollywood are currently going for $700,000 to $800,000. Single family home for $2 million. So the reality is that we're going to remain a city of renters. The actual number is about almost 80% of our city are renters. Our rent stabilization ordinance is a very important part of that. The 20% inclusionary housing ordinance, we are unique in having that. Los Angeles does not have that sort of inclusionary housing ordinance. If LA did what West Hollywood does, we would go a long way to getting the homeless off of the streets. So West Hollywood, we've had to look at how do we maintain our historic structures and at the same time meet regional housing needs assessment, RENA. Everyone's talking about RENA. That's what it stands for. Our contribution to helping the supply of housing across the state. We're going to have to build in commercial corridors. That's the reality. If we want to protect tenants in their existing apartments that are rent controlled and not have them displaced by new development, then our only option really is to build along the commercial corridors, along Santa Monica Boulevard, along Sunset, Beverly. Mixed use is the answer to that problem. And I think I'm red. I'll stop now. Thank you.
All right, guys. So next up, let's talk about law enforcement and public safety. From our national leaders to our local leaders, there is a significant ongoing discourse about defunding police and in particular the overuse of force. The LA Sheriff's Department has long been the police force of West Hollywood. So what should the city do to work with the Sheriff's Department to address issues related to potential improper use of force, if anything, and improve community engagement? And for this one, we will go ahead and start with you, Mr. Erickson.
Thank you so much. So I called into the Public Safety Commission meeting this past Wednesday. I was the only public speaker to talk about their joint task force that they're doing with our Human Services Commission. The work that we need to do as not only elected officials, but leaders to make sure we're not only bringing accountability and transparency to law enforcement is a critical thing that we all need to address right now, whether it's in our own personal activism or once we're elected, the ways in which we have direct power over our sheriff's contract. When I started at the city as an intern and then was Abby Land's deputy, I went to National Night Out. I was engaged with our neighborhood watch programs, all of our community organizations, community partners like Congregation Kolami, who's over here on the east side, to make sure that everyone had a seat and a voice at the table. Ever since then, our neighborhood watch groups have dwindled. We have roughly above 10 right now, I'm pretty sure, when we had over 20 at one point. We need to make sure that we're investing the dollars that we need and we see the community wanting and begging for back into our community. Reinvesting money back into law enforcement is something that we have to assess in the ways in which it benefit our community, or does it benefit the sheriff's department? And right now, we need to make sure that our community is our number one focus, because people are at home, because they're staying safe at home, and we need to make sure that they know their neighborhoods are protected and their community members have their backs.
Great. Thank you, John Erickson. And next up, let's go to John Heilman. What should the city do to address the issue of law enforcement, the proposition to defund police and improve community engagement?
Well, I don't support reducing our budget for law enforcement and public safety. And I say public safety because it isn't all a budget directed towards the sheriff. We have other law enforcement and other public safety personnel. This is a city where we have a lot of establishments where alcohol is served. We have nighttime problems. We have people in the city who victimize others. We also have people who come in from outside the city and try to engage in street robbery and other types of crimes. So everyone wants us to be safe, but we need to do it in a right way. We need to do it in a way so that everyone who comes here and everyone who lives here and everyone who works here feels that the law enforcement agency and the law enforcement public safety services really work for everyone and are fair and treat everyone in an appropriate way. And unfortunately, we've seen incidents throughout this country where that's not occurring, where Black and brown people are being arrested at disproportionate rates and people are being killed as a result of police violence. We need to stop that. And as a city, I really think that we can play a leading role, just like we did early on in insisting on the sheriff make changes to ensure non-discrimination on the basis of sexual orientation. We should be leading the way in forcing the sheriff to make changes that will affect not only West Hollywood, but all of the contract cities that use the sheriffs for law enforcement.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. And next up, we have Noemi Torres.
Thank you, Dylan. This is such a great conversation that we should have had a long time ago. Unfortunately, we're having it now. And what we need to do is make sure that not only we know where the money is going to be used or is being used for the police department, I would recommend a police reassessment on where the money, how the money is being used, where the money is going. I would really encourage re-education and police reform on how things are being done, because it's happening over and over again, not necessarily in West Hollywood, but because we're a contract city, we have to make sure that we are diligent and making sure that we know what's happening with the sheriff's department. I would love to see an increase in security ambassadors, not only on the east side, but the west side and in central West Hollywood. And as well, just like John Erickson said, make sure that we're able to communicate and have just show up for our neighbors, make sure that everybody is safe, and work with the security ambassadors, with the Public Safety Commission, as well as the nonprofit social services that we have in West Hollywood to support where we're going and how we're handling the present at the moment.
Thank you, Noemi. And next up, let's go to Mr. Block.
Hello.
Tell us your position on law enforcement.
Lots. Well, I do not advocate defunding the place. We're a general law city, so we really contract out separately with our various collaborative agencies. So our sheriff is one, but we also have the block-by-block security ambassadors, our homeless outreach team, and we build off the base, which if you're a big, giant city where everything falls under one roof, like Contract City, then you would have to separate out and defund the police. So this concept of defunding the police doesn't really work for us. But on the bigger question of public safety, this is where I start to say, I'm mad as hell and I'm not going to take it anymore. Every day we have shoplifters and homeless problems on the street, gunshots on my street twice this month, sirens that are so loud. There is so much crime going on that it can never even get a cop either. I advocate for updating our homeless contract that includes night and weekend outreach, additional block-by-block security ambassadors in each side sheriff station, and changing the purview of our Public Safety Commission, which is so weak. As far as this task force they have, for the last many meetings I've been saying you do not have any joint task force. The last one was with transportation when I organized the Crosswalks joint meeting. This was 5 or 6 years ago. But we can't rebuild our economy if we don't provide safe streets to welcome residents and guests to our restaurants and our nightlife, and for our community members.
Great. Thanks, Larry. And let's go ahead next to Sepi Shyne.
Thank you. We need to keep our neighborhoods safe, and we also need to make sure the rights of people to be free from overuse of force is instilled, and we can do that by dismantling systemic racism. This is the root cause of the overuse of force by police. We need to create a social justice task force made up of Black, Indigenous, and other people of color who are residents, workers, and business owners to advise the City Council on social equity issues and reforms needed to dismantle systemic racism. More than 7,600 of our residents are Black, Indigenous, and people of color, and we need a voice. Our sheriffs go through sensitivity training, but we need to have them and all city officials and staff trained on anti-systemic racism training, which is more proactive and effective. We can also allocate some of the money and responsibilities from the sheriff's department to other areas so the sheriffs can focus on what they're trained to do, which is to deal with people who have mental illness and violent crimes. Right now, our MET teams are great, where they deal with people who have mental illness with a sheriff who is trained and a social service worker. I want that funding increased. I want our block-by-block security ambassador funding increase so that all our streets are patrolled by them. We should also look at helping our infrastructure and light up our streets more so it's safe to walk at night by fast-tracking the LED program, and continue to look at where we can redirect our money for neighborhood disputes so that instead of the sheriffs, more code compliance officers can take care of those issues.
Great. Thanks, Sepi. And Councilmember Duran, why don't you go ahead and wrap us up, close us out on this topic.
Thank you, Dylan. Let me start by saying I've been endorsed by both the Sheriff Deputies Union and also the firefighters here in our city. And the thing that's ironic about that is back in the 80s, when I was part of ACT UP, Chris Fairchild, the late Chris Fairchild, and I put a proposition on the West Hollywood ballot to create our own police department, the West Hollywood Police Department. That initiative failed 48 to 52. And fortunately, it did fail, because had we created our own police department, the pensions would now be crushing our city budget. But out of getting that close to passing that initiative, a lot of major reforms happen in the Sheriff's Department. No more sexual orientation discrimination. No more lewd conduct arrests happening around the city parks and the Pacific Design Center. Sensitivity training about LGBT culture. We created a lot of reform with our local sheriffs. And my experience has been when we have a problem deputy and what department doesn't. When that does occur, simply talking to the captain and asking him or her to move that deputy out, they will. Because we don't tolerate that sort of racism or intolerance or homophobia here in the city of West Hollywood. I do not support defunding the police. I think that our Sheriff's Department does a great job. and actually works closely with our community. Most of the crime that occurs in our city is crime of opportunity, a lot of property theft, a lot of car vandalism. Rarely do we get something really serious and violent like a gunshot. Recently, we had to deal with that coming out of cookies on Melrose in the city of Los Angeles. And we're now working to do everything we can to shut cookies down and get them out from having impacts in our city.
Great. Thank you, Councilmember Duran.
Thank you all. I want to ask a follow-up question to this, because while you all talked about some comprehensive programs about public safety in West Hollywood, I want you to imagine you're sitting down one-on-one with the sheriff of our county, Villanueva, and actually, what would your advice be to him about the balance necessary between ensuring public safety and preventing overuse of force, as we've seen recently from some deputies in other parts of LA County? So we'll go back up to the same order, John Erickson.
If I was sitting down with our sheriffs right now, I would make sure he knows not to detain press, and make sure that he knows that we have a constitutional amendment to see what's going on and make sure the public is greatly informed. Right now, we have a balancing act that we have to really make sure our sheriff is enforcing. West Hollywood, as you've heard John Duran and John Heilman talk about it, has made sure that our sheriff's department is integrated in our community. They are at every event. They do things like coffee with the cops. They're out there in our community. Our Block by Block ambassadors are well known to many of our groups over here, especially on the east side. I see them every night when they're riding around. But we need to make sure that responsibility and transparency comes down from the top. And ultimately, our sheriff needs to be involving community groups and major stakeholders to really start reassessing what does not only ending systemic racism look like within the sheriff's department at large, but ultimately how we can move everyone forward on an understanding of what accountability looks like. Right now, I think we have an accountability problem. We have an accountability problem because our sheriff right now is acting alone. And we need to make sure that sheriffs, like our sheriff's captain here in West Hollywood, and the officers that all of us know because we're in the community and we see them because they're at all of our meetings, is reflected all the way back up to the top. So we need to make sure that everyone has a seat at the table and not just people that are going to sit there and critique, because we need that critique in order to move forward.
Thank you. John Heilman?
Sure. I think I would tell the sheriff that he's not the right person for the job. He has not demonstrated since his election that he has the ability to listen to other people. He has not demonstrated that he is in the position for the right reasons. He seems to be there for more of a personal retribution based on being passed over in the past for promotions. I just don't think he has the capabilities that we need as sheriff. But if I were having a conversation, I probably politically wouldn't tell him that directly to his face. But if he is open to changing, I think that John Erickson said it right. He has to also be open to listening and hearing from people and working collaboratively with other elected officials and with the community. And he needs to understand that his actions in trying to restore to the sheriff's department people who have been accused of domestic violence, that doesn't lend credibility to the department. He needs to hold officers accountable when they screw up. He needs to send a clear message that that kind of behavior is not acceptable in the department. He needs to root out the gang activity within the department. And he needs to really invest time with people in the community who have views different than his.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Noemi Torres, would you share what you would say to the sheriff over coffee?
Over coffee, yes, Rabbi. Social distance, I hope. This question reminds me of when I used to be a manager and I had to bring someone in to have a conversation, a tough conversation. And I would have to check and see where they're at, what their goals are, making sure I'm asking questions and knowing that I'm here to have the conversation for the positive, right? And I believe that there's always someone that's on the defensive, and we want to make sure that we provide the opportunity for growth, reassess what is happening. And yes, the word that's coming up on everyone's conversation right now is accountability. making sure that we're providing the right leader. And if Sheriff Villanueva is not doing a good job, it's probably because he doesn't have the support that he needs. And I believe that there is room for growth, but I also want to make sure that people are accountable for what they're doing, where they're policing, making sure that they're actually taking the time to know their neighborhood, to know their constituents, speak with them, and actually know what is needed in the community. The west side to the east side is totally different what is needed. And so I would ask that conversation and make sure that he see what his plan is for the next 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, and see how we can work together to make it work.
Thank you. Larry Block.
Hi.
What are you going to say to him?
Well, first, I'd like to understand his issues and his problems, because it's he might be under budget restraints. He may not have enough officers, and to truly understand what his needs are, because it's very difficult to have a staff of thousands of officers and be responsible for the actions, spur of the minute actions that happen spur of the minute in crisis situations. So I'd like to understand and digest some of the problems and the remedies that they had first. But I was at the pleasure of an invitation from Councilmember Duran 2 years ago to go along with him on National Night Out, and we drove in the cop car together to the various parties and neighborhood groups. And we were in the car and we were talking. I'm very active with the company ICAN Enterprises, which has advanced camera patrol, cameras, body cameras, and those kind of accountability things. And I asked in the car, do you have body cameras? When will you get these new body cameras? And now 2 years later, LA County is just getting around to body cameras. So I think sometimes you have to have cameras and you take the accountability away from the officer and make them accountable because they're aware based on a policy where we're giving them cameras, and then we're also making them more sensitive. They're more sensitive to what they're doing when they know they're being monitored. They're more sensitive, and sensitivity training. I think with particular to our community, we really need to know what kind of sensitivity training is being done and how we can improve it and reflect it into the community.
Thank you so much. Sepi, what are you going to tell him?
Well, Sheriff Villanueva ran on a campaign of ending corruption and bringing accountability, and he's done completely the opposite. I would first ask him to do an independent investigation for the death of Andre Guadardo. I would ask him to uphold the constitutional rights of the press and people, and to agree to have anti-systemic racism training instilled for all sheriff's deputies, and really let him know that the way and style that he is leading is actually causing more danger for his sheriff's deputies. Our deputies in West Hollywood are great, but the problem is at the top. And if he's not willing to hold officers accountable, then I would ask him to resign.
Thank you so much. John Duran?
Well, Rabbi, I guess I'd start out by saying, first of all, I voted for the other guy. I endorsed Jim McDonald, along with the Los Angeles Times, and that's who should be our sheriff today. I blame the Los Angeles County Democratic Party because they lined themselves up behind Villanueva because he had a Hispanic surname in a county that's 50% Latino, like myself. He won. He won the race, and despite the fact he had not been properly vetted by anybody, and just based on his race and his ethnicity, people voted assuming they were going to get something that they didn't, and that's the problem with that sort of thing. We're talking about racism, but I want to say, I'm a criminal defense lawyer. That's what I do for my day job, and I've spent 30 years in doing criminal justice in the courts, and my clients have been black, brown, Asian, white, everything in between, and so have the police officers involved. So it's not so simple to just try to reduce all of this to an issue of race. Not every black person who gets arrested is a victim of injustice, and not every cop who is bullying people is necessarily white. And if we're going to get into a discussion about race, we got to get in a little more deeply than just defendants and the accused are always right and the police are always wrong. It's not that simplistic. I think I would tell Villanueva the same thing is true for his deputies. Not all his cops are good cops. There are bad deputies. and he has to deal with them. He wants people to start to trust law enforcement again. He's got to show he's getting in there and getting rid of, disciplining the officers who are not upholding their duty.
Thank you all so much for those really thoughtful answers. We're going to switch a little bit gears here. In recent months, we've seen an increase in anti-Semitic graffiti in West Hollywood, as well as anti-trans and anti-gay incidents in our city. What's your plan to combat ongoing incidents of hate, sometimes violent, that appear in West Hollywood? And we'll go to Sepi first.
Thank you. Well, we know that hate crimes against the transgender people, especially Black transgender women, gay men, and anti-Semitic hate crimes are some of the highest crimes in LA County, and they have increased. With respect to all of these hate crimes, we as leaders need to have an absolute no tolerance policy and the courage to call out any and all anti-Semitism, transphobia, and homophobia as well, regardless of who is engaging in this hate. I would like to see a robust program in place that educates our residents about these crimes in our community when they happen. Some of the other measures I talked about before with regard to increasing block by block can help with preventions. Increased lighting in our streets will help. But we also need to make sure we continue to support city-funded programming and events that protect and support our Jewish community, our transgender community, and gay men. We also need to ensure that we do not support any programming that is anti-Semitic ever. With regard to the classification of hate crimes, I want to make sure that law enforcement is classifying hate crimes correctly as well. And these are some solutions that I propose.
Terrific, thank you. John Erickson.
I'm the victim of a hate crime. I was hate crimed in college, and so this is something that's really personal to me. We need to make sure that we're not only as allies, like myself as a white cisgendered male, standing up for our Black and brown community members, our bi, Indigenous people of color, our Black Indigenous people of color, because we need to make sure that West Hollywood, which has for so long made sure that we are a beacon of standing for the right thing when everyone else was against us, whether that was creating a transgender advisory task force, the creation of the Lesbian and Gay Advisory Board, working to make sure West Hollywood was on the right side of history, even when the rest of the country wasn't on our side. We know that these hate crimes are not only happening to people in our city, but around the country. So we need to make sure that we are opening up our doors, reassessing our values, and making sure that we're moving into the 21st century as an inclusive city that is working to not only make sure our board and commission appointees are diverse, because that's one way in which we can show our values, but one way that we're not only opening up our city to make sure that everyone knows that they're welcome. Because right now, as we saw with the All Black Lives Matter march or other marches, these things haven't been the case. We need to not only stand up with our words, but with our actions. And we know that the city has done this work, but that doesn't mean we should stop ever, because right now people are feeling alone and scared, and West Hollywood has always been that beacon, and we need to continue that moving forward.
Thank you so much. John Heilman.
Thank you for that question, and I appreciate the answers of the other candidates. Obviously, as a city, we need to be very strong that hate crimes are not going to be tolerated in our city, but we also need to educate the community as to what constitutes a hate crime. Some people don't realize that they engage in hate crimes. We've had a number of incidents where a gay man or a lesbian gets in a fight with their partner or their ex-partner, and they use physical violence, and they also use derogatory language towards that person. We typically think of a hate crime as somebody homophobic coming in, and obviously that's a hate crime. But when you start calling people names as you're engaged in physical violence, even if you're a member of that group, it's still a hate crime. And so some of the hate crimes we have are not the kind of hate crimes that we all tend to fear that somebody's coming in to victimize us, but they're nevertheless hate crimes. And we need to tell people that engaging in that kind of conduct, even if you're part of the in-group, that contributes. The other thing we need to do, and I hope everyone's in agreement with this, we need to get rid of Donald Trump out of the White House. his rhetoric and his statements have contributed to an increase of hate crimes, not only in our area, but throughout the country. And we see mentally ill and mentally unstable people engaging in this kind of conduct because they've been given a green light
Thank you so much.
by the president.
Noemi, would you share your position here?
Yes, I agree with John Heilman here, and that we need to start from scratch on education reform when it comes to what it looks like to be empathetic and be able to support one another. It all boils down to that. Conversations, getting to know each other. I mean, I gotta be honest with you, I had no idea what anti-Semitism was when I was younger. And so by having the opportunity to be part of this community, I've gotten to learn a lot more about it. I am humbled to know that I know nothing of so many things. And John Heilman was right as well, is that we don't know what hate crime looks like sometimes. Just like sexual harassment, sometimes we don't know what that looks like. So education, the knowledge, and the training for everyone to have. And yes, we need to start from the White House as well. We need to make sure that we have the leadership that's going to be empathetic, that's going to actually show what a good leader looks like, and be transparent on what you're doing, and ask the questions that are needed to provide the opportunity to learn from each other and support each other through this journey of madness. I mean, it is not easy to go through this alone, through the All Black Lives Matter, as well as a Latina woman in this city, but it is important for us to provide the opportunity to do so and learn from each other.
Thank you so much. Larry Block, I suspect you might have something to say about this.
Well, I do, but I first want to point out that, we talk about people of color running for office in West Hollywood, and if we look at 6 people on this Zoom, or 3 of them would claim that they're persons of color. So we should celebrate the amount of ethnic diversity in our election instead of putting it down, because we have a diverse candidates here. But I don't know where to begin except to talk about my own experience. And I went to college in sunny Fredonia by Lake Erie. It was a small community college, and my roommates never met a Jew. They asked me where my horns were. As I walked to classes, they yelled "kike" out the dorm windows. So I felt it then in 1980 and never thought I would feel it again. And now in my shop, the phone calls, die fag, that come. It happens so often that I don't let the phones ring at the store. Customers can't call the store. Every call goes to my phone to protect my employees from the threats that come so regularly. We tried the cops, we tried the sheriff, Google numbers, you can't get it. So you can't get the people. They don't do nothing. They paint my store with SWAT stickers and those chants, "The Jews will not replace us." I never thought in my life, my mother talking about the Holocaust, that I would see that now. And as far as anti-trans, it's a tremendous problem. I've attended 3 job fairs to try to bring jobs, transgender job fairs to try to bring jobs, both on behalf of Block Party and Keller Williams. COVID got on the way of my plan to work with the Trans Can Work nonprofit with Duran and Shane Nash to develop a Trans Can Work program.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
John Duran, would you share your ideas here?
Thank you. Yes, Rabbi. So back in the 1980s, I had a swastika placed on my law office door because of the sort of work that I did on behalf of the LGBT and HIV communities. After that happened, the Lieutenant Governor, Leo McCarthy, appointed me to California's Hate Crimes Commission. That was 30 years ago. 30 years ago. We have been talking about racism, homophobia, transphobia, misogyny, anti-immigrant fever for decades. It hasn't gone away. So I'm going to say this boldly. I think it's going to be something we have to constantly work on throughout our entire lives. And that's just part of the price of being somebody who's different in America. We're always going to be singled out for being different. And I agree with John Heilman, what he said. We need to start by cutting the head off the snake at the top of the government, who has given the green light to some of the most hateful fringe groups in our society coming after us. Finally, I want to point out that hate crime actually isn't a separate crime. It's a special allegation that enhances penalties. So it is quite difficult for a prosecutor to file a hate crime allegation unless it's lined up with the underlying misdemeanor or felony. It's a nuance in the law, but I know that whenever we have the evidence that supports that a crime has been committed motivated by hate or fear under any of the protected categories, we immediately push against our sheriffs and the district attorney to make sure it's handled appropriately.
Thank you.
All right, thanks, guys. We'll do a quick follow-up on this question. And what do you think, Rabbi? Since we're running close on time, let's do this
I
follow-up.
think we should jump to the next question, actually.
The nonprofit one? I was thinking we could do a 30-second reply on the nonprofit one. How about that? Just to keep it tight. All right, let's do that. So, guys, for the next question, I'm going to leave you on the screen, and we'll do a 30-second reply on this one, okay? So the question is, look, the city can't do everything to combat hate and intolerance. That's not the role of the city. It takes a community. So what role should nonprofits and other stakeholders play in supporting city policy to combat racism, to combat anti-Semitism and homophobia, and promote tolerance and mutual respect? And Noemi, let's go ahead and start with you.
30 seconds, right? Okay. So just like you are doing such an amazing job in getting the education and the knowledge from ICAN and also Congregation Kol Ami, I would love to be part of having a lot of nonprofits to educate and get to know each other and collaborate to keep on moving forward.
Great. Thank you, Noemi. And Sepi, let's go ahead and go next to you.
I think partnership is really important here. The great thing about nonprofits and other organizations that work for community and in these areas is they specialize. And so the blind spots that the city council has or maybe can't do everything, we can partner up and ensure community engagement and collaboration. That's going to be really important.
Great, thanks. Let's go next to Mr. Erickson.
This is also a question of how our city staff works so well with our organizations that we have all throughout the city as well as regionally. Our city staff has long-time connections to amazing nonprofits and amazing organizations and faith-based organizations like Congregation Kol Ami that are critical because they're in the community and talking with everyone and making sure they're bringing us back complete reports that have the input of the community for us to examine as council members. So it's not only integral we're out there working with nonprofits, but we're making sure that our city staff, who already does a great job like this, I was one, I'm endorsed by the city staff, is also doing that work because we can't do it alone. Our city staff does it, and we need to do more of that.
Thanks, John. Next up, let's go to Mayor Pro Tem Heilman.
Thank you, Dylan. I think this is a great question. We already do partner with a number of agencies. We partner with the Gay and Lesbian Center. They take reports of hate crimes there. They put on educational forums in conjunction with the city to try to educate the public about hate crimes. We have funded legal services there for people who are victims. We also have a number of other nonprofit organizations that we partner with, and I think this is something that we can expand as well.
Great. Thanks, Mayor Pro Tem. Next up, let's go to Mr. Block.
Hello, everybody. We only have 30 seconds, so I'd like to give one example to go back to this example of how a nonprofit can help. And the Trans Can Work is a nonprofit that the city funds, and I approached them about a trans academy where we can indoctrinate and bring trans workers into Block Party and then train them and offshoot them to local businesses. And the future might look like a city with many trans and accepted workers. So that would be an example of how government works with a nonprofit to create and help, acceptance and promote diversity.
Thanks. Thank you. And finally, Councilmember Duran.
Thank you. Yes, we do partner currently with nonprofits. That's how we do most of our programming. I think I've had the rabbi participate on everything from crystal meth to marriage to everything else. We're always bringing her into our panels. But if I was to be self-critical against city government, I would say that one of the faults that we have is that we are continuously going back to the same nonprofits over and over again, and we've not been expansive in inviting new voices to the table to speak about any of the social ills or policies we wish to address. And that would be the only self-criticism I would have for the city, is we need to reach out more broadly and expand into other nonprofits that we don't currently utilize.
Perfect. Thank you. All right, Rabbi.
Great. Let's talk about city staff for a minute. They have a large role in carrying out city programs, and yet they are unelected. As a council member, how are you going to ensure that city staff is actually responsive to city stakeholders, commissions, and the council as they plan and carry out our city programs and events? John Erickson, would you address that?
This is a question I know a lot about because I was a city staff member for 6 years. I started as an intern all the way up to serving as council deputy to Abby Land. The city does and has amazing staff members who have been involved with us and are long-term staff members for nearly over 30 years. I think when we look at the ways in which the policies, the processes that have been established by the council and then implemented by city staff is important because that allows to make sure that we all know, I know it's an issue for this group, that process is followed. And when process isn't followed, we need to make sure that we do all that we can to get back on track. Our city staff does an incredible job, and right now they are working overtime. They are working by making sure people are getting rental assistance. They're making sure by getting people connected with our social service providers. They're dealing with issues of public safety every day because people are home in our communities. They're recognizing and seeing and stepping up and meeting this moment. I'm so proud to have been the president of the labor union when I was a city staff member because it's not only a community, but it is a group of individuals who may or may not live in the city, but they care about us so much. They care about the residents, the businesses, and all that we do. We need to make sure that we're not only supporting our city staff, but making sure as council members, we're leading by example to make sure that they have all the tools necessary that they need to implement the vision and process of the city.
John Heilman.
Thank you, Rabbi. I think that I disagree with one of the presumptions of this question. I think our city staff does an incredible job of listening to the community, trying to solicit input from the community. You'll see that most of our processes already have built-in neighborhood meetings. We have built-in various commissions where matters have to go before commissions to get input from the public. So I think our city staff is incredibly dedicated. And many of them actually, a number of them live in the city. And as John Erickson said, some of them have been serving this community for many, many years. When there's a crisis, they come into the city to be here rather than being in their home to take care of their family. So I think our city staff really goes above and beyond. They're human. They make mistakes, just like the council and just like everyone in the community makes mistakes. But I think our staff works very hard on behalf of the residents, on behalf of the businesses, and on behalf of the visitors who come here. And I think most of the people in the community really appreciate the hard work of our city staff.
Thank you so much. John Duran.
Yes, a couple of thoughts on this. I mean, no surprise here, but the City Employees Union have also endorsed John Heilman and myself because we've all been working with them for so long. John for 35 years and myself for 20 years. And they are fallible and they do make mistakes from time to time. And I know some of the more prominent ones they've made over the years. But having said that, I think they all work really hard and they do what they can. And we give them a great amount of resources to do some incredible programming, unlike any other city of our size in Southern California. I think one of the important things to bring up here, though, is to remember that we are part-time council members. We don't work at City Hall. The only people that we hire and fire are the city manager and the city attorney. Other than that, we don't intervene, we don't intrude, we don't get down and get busy with the staff, because to do that would usurp their immediate supervisors and the city manager. So we set the broad policy, and then if we have criticism, our criticism should be given to the city manager, not to a director, not to a manager, and not directly to an employee. That's the way the system is set up. And that's the way it should be because we are part-time city council members in a general law city.
Thank you so much. Sepi?
Yeah, I think the issue here is really a systemic one. City staff have great intentions and they all do a great job with what they are, what they do. As a former member of the Lesbian Gay Advisory Board and now a business license commissioner, I can say that with certainty, with regard to my experience with the advisory boards, there is an unbalance of influence by staff versus the power of the actual advisory board members. I've also heard these complaints from commissioners and other commissions as well. The people elect our city council members Yes, city council members are part-time. However, each council member gets to appoint commissioners and advisory board members. So it's an extension of the people's voices. So we need to put more power for the people's voices. One way we can do this is have less focus on some of the boards and members doing heavy event planning and have them focus more on policy and solutions to make our city better. I also believe that all advisory board meetings and commissions should be televised. And now that our world has shifted, we should consider really in the long term how we can allow public meetings and public the option to engage by dialing in and advocate for the Brown Act to be amended so we could do this long term to give community members more opportunity to engage. This will mean more participation and more transparency as well.
Thank you. Larry Block?
Well, I agree with John Heilman and John Duran that most of the city staff does do a great job. But there are exceptions. There's ex-city staff members who like to go to Facebook and start trashing residents and calling them NIMBYs and things like that. And I mean, and that's just so offensive to have an ex-city staff member on a pension down in Palm Springs going to Facebook to trash residents. And I think everybody might know who we're talking about. But often I can text my phone number to any city staff member on nights and weekends and get an immediate reply. Where I would parse a difference in improving the city staff and its relationship to the community is most of the city staff does not live in West Hollywood. So I would hope that more residents are offered job opportunities. And the converse of that is to incentivize city staff to live in West Hollywood. And that can be achieved by providing some housing incentives. If we can attach residency requirements to city staff jobs that do not require special skills or training, we can breed a city hall that's born and lives and works and spends their money in West Hollywood. And then they'll have a better sense of what's going on around town and they'll do a better job.
Thank you so much. Noemi?
Yes, Rabbi, thank you. Being part of the Women's Advisory Board and being part now of the Public Facilities Commission, I have seen how hard the staff works and how if I text one of them, if there's an issue over the weekend, they are there and they are willing to and able to support and help. I know for a fact, John Erickson, him and I actually met at the Women's Advisory Board, and they just work diligently to make sure that the community is provided with the information that they need, with the advisory board being able to support that. And I think that what Larry said, I think it would be great for them to have the opportunity to not have to be commuting to and fro where they live, be part of the community itself, since they pretty much live here. They've been working so hard. But I would have to make sure that we check in with them a little bit more than usual because they are overwhelmed. I'm pretty sure that 2 or 3 of the staffers that I know, they have so much resources, but not enough people to help them support what they need to do. So I, as a leader of the community, being able to provide them with that support, I could call them frontliners because they're the ones that are taking care of pretty much everything. So I commend them for everything that they do, and I hope that I'm able to be part of the support that they need to keep on moving forward.
Thank you.
Okay, great. So guys, we are nearing the end, and I think what we're going to do is maybe we will do we'll go ahead and jump to the close. One question we didn't get to ask, and maybe you can include it in your close, is about the effect of the pandemic on business. Is that okay, Rabbi, if we do it that way? All right. So let's go ahead and jump to the close. We will do it in alphabetical order again. And again, I encourage you to maybe in your close to address the impact of the pandemic on business. You'll go ahead and get, we'll do 2 minutes for close, and Block, we will start with you.
Well, as far as anybody, other candidates here who all experienced a pandemic, I haven't had a chance to experience a pandemic because the first day I was delivering mass to residents, I've been working every single day. The problems that we experience in small businesses are really complicated. We're talking about rents that are due. We're talking about insurance laws that allow employees to claim workman's compensation for any reason if they get COVID in the business. Liability policies are the main reason some bars don't even want to open. And I've been able to navigate this street and my store in the high rent district for over 11 years. And I understand commercial leases and I understand the issues. And one final point. In 11 years of my small business, I never had an unemployment claim until the pandemic. In 11 years with my business with drunks and drug addicts and a temperamental community, I've never had a filing, an adverse filing or a labor board filing against my business or me. Not one. That's a perfect small business record that no one can hold the case to. But I'd like to thank Denise and Dylan for your advocacy and engagement. I've been fighting for West Hollywood for years, and I'm running an honest campaign for the public good. This here is the story of David versus Goliath. Goliath is the two Johns with their deep pockets and developer dollars. And on this panel, only Noemi is not taking money from developers or union. So it's important that the special interests do not have a majority grip on the city council. I have an independent approach, a resident-oriented perspective, and ideas that can help move West Hollywood forward to create housing opportunities, cleaning up our streets, and restoring the beacon of hope that is slipping away. And I love West Hollywood. I have widespread resident support, and I'm able to fund my campaign with my own gelt. Maybe the other candidates should learn how to make a couple of bucks before they go and spend your tax dollars. So this is my bar mitzvah. You're all invited. And if you would like to support my campaign, please go to WeHo2020.com. Thank you and Shana Tova.
Thanks, Larry. Councilmember Duran, go ahead.
Thank you, Dylan. City of West Hollywood is at an existential moment, in my opinion. We are being challenged by not only a public health crisis with COVID-19, but also the collapse of our local economy. It's a really good book called There Goes the Gayborhood that was written about 15 years ago. And it talks about how LGBT communities are really centered around their commercial corridors. And in order to protect the identity, the brand of the city of West Hollywood, we need to be really attentive and protective of Santa Monica Boulevard and the businesses that are identified and exist there. Because if we don't, we will end up looking like Brentwood instead of West Hollywood. So I have been meeting privately with property owners who own these buildings and the businesses that are currently there. Sad reality is that many of them are not going to be able to reopen. That's just the practical reality of where we are. We can't give them money. The property owners can't just sit there with vacant buildings. So really it's imperative that those discussions happen now to make sure that if there are going to be new tenants, that those new tenants be LGBT-owned businesses and bars so that we retain the identity of our historic commercial district that has been so important to me and I think to so many others. This is Southern California's hub for LGBT culture, West Hollywood. It must remain so. We have been through an epidemic before. We went through AIDS and we came out stronger. We will go through COVID-19 and we will come out stronger on the other side. But it really requires that sort of hands-on work, business by business, location by location, to protect not only Santa Monica Boulevard, but our historic Sunset Strip as well. So I think I'm up to doing it. I would ask for your vote on November 3rd, and thank you for including me tonight.
Thank you, Councilmember Duran. John Erickson.
I want to go back to something about city staff for a second, because I learned my love of this city from the people that work and have dedicated their lives here. People like Michelle Bell, Larissa Fuchs, David Juni, Jeff Book. All of these people taught me my love of the city because they've been part of it for so long. As a person who has seen staff as well as businesses and community members have such an investment in our future, where we are currently, we need to make sure that council members as well as the city is doing all that we can to make sure our businesses thrive, but we get past this moment in time. And I know we will, because West Hollywood does it better than any other city. When you look at things like the Outzone program, to the ways in which we're working with our Chamber of Commerce, these are critical aspects that the city of West Hollywood does right, and we have to do it right. Our businesses are more than just businesses. They're community spaces. When you look at Gym Bar or all these other bars that have closed, they're places that people go not to have a drink, but to be with their friends, to be with people who maybe they can finally find love with, or they were cast out from their homes. That's what West Hollywood has always represented, because we're a place where everyone can come and feel not only loved, but equality, and know that we're working towards something that other cities should be doing like we are. I'm an East Side resident. I'm a renter. I worked at the city for 6 years. I'm a nonprofit healthcare director. And I'm in this city because I love it. I'm in this city because I know I'm going to make a promise to work every single day for not only the residents and businesses and community members, but it's something that I'm going to dedicate my life to and have dedicated my life to. I ask for your vote in November. I hope you'll go to ericksonforweho.com. And I really would just want to wish everyone an early Rosh Hashanah and thank Denise and Dylan for hosting this event.
Thank you. Thank you, John Erickson. Let's go to Mayor Pro Tem Heilman.
Thank you, Dylan, and thank you, Rabbi, for organizing tonight's event, and thank you to all the other candidates for their input tonight. I love this city. I think my 36 years of service to the community demonstrates how much I love this city, and I want to make sure it thrives, and I want to make sure that our businesses get back open and do so safely and provide the employment and the resources and the community spirit that we know of West Hollywood. But we're not going to be able to accomplish that unless all of us do our part in getting the virus under control. And that means that we need to follow the guidance of wearing masks, socially distancing, not going to gatherings. And once we have this virus under control, I am convinced that our business community will recover and it will thrive. In terms of what we're doing and what we need to be doing, I want to say what we're already doing. From the very moment this hit, our city manager and city staff and some of the council as well, we've been meeting regularly with our hoteliers, with our small businesses, with the Chamber of Commerce, asking the business community, what do you need? And recognizing that this is an ever-changing and ever-evolving situation. And as more business are able to reopen, we have been working in a very flexible and nimble way to try to respond to the unique needs of each and every business. And we've done that, and you can see that a number of the restaurants are open for outdoor dining, and that a number of other businesses have been able to even open during the pandemic because our city staff has been working so hard and so individualistically with each particular business owner. I just got an email today from one of those businesses that was so appreciative of the work that our city staff is doing. And I know that we can do more, and we will continue to do more to help our businesses thrive.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Heilman. And let's go to Sepi Shyne.
Well, I want to thank you so much for your time today and for hosting, and wishing you all a happy Rosh Hashanah for this weekend. West Hollywood is one of the most walkable cities in America and a world-class tourist destination. Many of our longtime small businesses have closed down the past few years, actually, even before the pandemic, and COVID has just made things worse, and it's going to continue for a long time. When small businesses suffer, so does our community and the economy. As an owner of 2 small businesses and representing in my legal practice small to mid-sized businesses, I know the highs and lows of running a small business, as well as the importance of a successful business to a thriving economy. I'll work with our small business owners, chamber, to create robust solutions to help our small businesses thrive. We definitely need to preserve the Rainbow District. Absolutely. We also need to create new incentives for residents to open small businesses in the city of West Hollywood. We need a small business navigator program to help cut red tape and chaperone people through City Hall bureaucracy when they're wanting to open up a business. I also would like a formation of a small business ad hoc committee to help with business recovery and ongoing issues related to small businesses. I want us to also work with the emerging digital market to help bring them to West Hollywood. This is an incredible market that is basically, if we're in a pandemic, it doesn't matter. And they will provide training programs to our residents too. Aside from being a small business owner and a queer immigrant, what sets me apart from the other candidates is, again, my small business expertise and the fact that I'm not taking any developer money, not a single penny. As someone who fled a war-torn country and lived the first 16 years of my life in America as an undocumented immigrant, I know what happens when there's inequities and when people in positions of power think they're better than you. I know once I'm elected, I'll have the responsibility to protect and serve everyone in our city and not just the privileged. I'm running because I'm the leader that will bring back the people's voices to City Hall, revitalize our economy, and protect our most vulnerable residents. I'm running because we all deserve to shine. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Sepi. And Noemi, go ahead and take us out.
I just want to thank you so much for giving us the opportunity to talk, Dylan and Rabbi Denise. I never thought I would be running for city council. I gotta be honest. I wanted to step out to the plate because there were more women that are needed in office. We need more of color in city council. I have been diligently speaking with small businesses in the corridor of Santa Monica Boulevard, seeing what it is that they are looking for, seeing what it is that they need, their frustrations, their wants, and how we can support them. A lot of them sometimes don't know where to find that information. And so one of my good things that I can provide to the city council once I'm in office is the connection part of it, the empathy, transparency. And I want to be able to make sure that we get through this together with the small business owners, making sure that they are knowing that we are working with them. And like John Heilman said, yes, there's a lot of resources that have been given to them. There's some of them that just don't know how to find that information or how to maneuver. Maybe it's not their first language and they need to know how that's happening. And so I'm looking forward to being a part of service, to keep on being in service to the community. I'm humbled to be part of this amazing group of people that are wanting leadership within the community. And I am hoping that you are able to support me on November 3rd, vote for Noemi Torres. And to everyone out there that's going to be celebrating Rosh Hashanah, Lashana Tova.
Wow, thank you so much to all of the candidates for making this evening such a thoughtful evening. We appreciate your civil dialogue with one another, and we appreciate all of your efforts. We want to remind everybody who's watching, elections are Tuesday, November 3rd. You must go out and vote. It is your civic duty. And we want to thank Dylan Hosier and the Israeli American Civic Action Network for all his efforts to help tonight and to control all the magic of the screen. And we want to thank all of you for watching and participating with us. We at Congregation Colamy in West Hollywood, we're at Lexington and La Brea. We want to wish our whole city a very, very happy new year, a sweet new year, and a year of health, well-being, and strength for everyone who not only lives in our city, but works in our city and visits our city. Please stay safe, wear a mask, be socially distant, but that doesn't mean we can't connect our hearts and our spirits in the great spirit of the city of West Hollywood. So stay safe out there. And again, thank you to all our candidates, to Larry Block, to John Duran, to John Erickson, to John Heilman, to Sepi Shyne and Noemi Torres for being with us tonight. We're glad you were with us.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you all.
so much.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Be safe, everyone.
Thank you all.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you all.